Hi, my name is Meredith, and the last time I sat at my family's Thanksgiving table, my 6-year-old daughter whispered, "Mommy, if I sit down, my private part will hurt." The room went silent. My sister's husband laughed it off, and my own mother told me to teach her manners. In that single moment, I realized home wasn't safe, and silence was no longer an option. But what happens when the truth a child dares to speak collides with a family determined to bury it? When a mother must choose between protecting her daughter and protecting the illusion of family? I looked at my little girl, tears on her cheeks, and promised her out loud, "You are safe with me. I believe you." If you were in my place, what would you do? Protect the family name or protect the child, no matter the cost? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We share new stories every single day. Hit like and let us know what city you're watching from in the comments. At night, Thanksgiving evening was never meant to feel like a courtroom. Yet the second Alara and I stepped onto Claudine's porch, I felt a verdict hanging in the air. The porch light flickered, catching a swirl of frost, and for a breath I wondered if turning around would hurt less than ringing that bell. But Alara, clutching her stuffed raccoon, whispered, "It smells like pie in there, Mommy." And that was reason enough to walk inside. Years had passed since I brought a casserole to this house. The wallpaper was the same pale yellow, still curling at the corners, but everything felt smaller, sharper, like the walls had listened to too many secrets and grown mean. Claudine's hug was quick, her perfume powder-sweet and distant. "You look tired, Meredith. Long drive?" she asked. What she meant was, "Do not start anything." My sister Rowena was setting the dining room, crystal glinting under her perfect hair. She shot me the tight smile folks give telemarketers right before hanging up. I tried to shrug off the chill. Alara's eyes darted across the family she barely knew. Uncle Travis laughing too loudly, Grandma Agnes reminding everyone where to sit, Cousin Phoebe chasing gravy boats. Alara squeezed my fingers, unspoken code for stay close. We gathered around the long cedar table, the same one Daddy sanded by hand before he passed. A century of blessings had been spoken over that wood, but tonight the grain looked bruised. Alara was told to join the 2 younger cousins at the far end. She hesitated, twisting the hem of her sweater. I nudged her chair out, but she leaned toward me instead. "What is wrong, baby?" Her voice came out thinner than a breath. "Mommy, if I sit down, my private part will hurt." The sentence was too delicate for the room. It shattered anyway. Time slowed. Sounds warped. My fork slipped, clanged against the plate. Travis barked a short laugh. "Drama runs in that side of the family," he said, waving a buttery roll like a gavel. Claudine cleared her throat. "Alara, manners. Sit up straight. Meredith, she needs firmer boundaries." Everyone resumed passing dishes, pretending a 6-year-old had not just dropped a grenade at the table. I knelt beside Alara, my palms suddenly damp. "Sweetheart, does something hurt right now?" She nodded, tears glassy but silent. My pulse rattled in my ears. "We are going to the bathroom, okay?" I murmured. Nobody offered help. Plates clinked. Someone blessed the cranberry sauce. I guided Alara down the hallway, feeling every stair prick my back like tacks. Behind the locked door, the smell of lavender soap failed to mask my fear. Alara flinched when I helped her step out of her tights. There, along the crease of tender skin, I saw redness no child earns on a playground. A metallic taste filled my mouth. I had spent 2 years volunteering at a women's shelter. I knew this color, this flinch. Knowing did not make it easier when it was my own child. Alara's eyes searched mine. Did I do something bad? No, baby. You did nothing wrong. I pulled her close, counting her breaths until mine steadied. Back in the hallway, I met Claudine's glare. "Is this necessary?" she hissed. "Dinner's getting cold." Elara is not well. We are stepping out, I said. Voice too calm, even for me. Rowena rolled her eyes so hard I worried they would stick. Travis smirked and sipped his wine. I tucked Elara into the guest room, handing her the raccoon. Squeeze him if you get scared. I will be right outside. She nodded, cheeks blazing with shame a child should not own. The night air bit as I stepped onto the porch. My hand shook dialing, but I forced myself not to cry. Dispatchers need clarity, not tears. When the operator answered, words tasted like rust. Please send someone, I managed, staring at the golden rectangle of dining room light where my family laughed without us. I think something's been happening to my daughter. My plea to the dispatcher still rang in my ears when the rumble of engines broke the quiet street. Blue strobes bounced off Claudine's shutters like restless fireflies. I stood on the porch gripping my elbows, coatless against the November chill, refusing to step back inside until help crossed that threshold. The first cruiser eased to the curb, followed by an ambulance. 2 officers climbed the steps, hats in hand, scanning the house as though danger might leap from the rose bushes. A female EMT hoisted a red bag over her shoulder and met my gaze. I nodded toward the door. She understood without words. Claudine yanked it open before anyone could knock. Her eyebrows shot up. Did someone pass out? Meredith, what have you done? I could barely muster a whisper. My daughter needs a medical exam. She is in the guest room. Claudine's mouth twitched, caught between confusion and irritation. But she stepped aside. The smell of turkey and sage slapped us all as we filed in. The living room erupted the moment uniforms appeared. Rowena hurried over, heels clicking on hardwood. You are making a scene, she hissed, jaw so tight it trembled. Behind her, Travis shook his head like a disappointed coach. See what happens when unstable people like this become parents? Do you see? He muttered to no one in particular. I stared straight through him, refusing to let the insult land. The EMT knelt beside Elara, who sat cross-legged on the bed, hugging her raccoon. She spoke softly, asked permission to check. Elara bit her lip, then slowly nodded. They disappeared into the adjoining bathroom while an officer waited outside, arms folded in the hall. Relatives formed a half-circle, peppering me with questions. Is she sick? Did she fall? Is this about her acting up at supper? I answered none. My eyes stayed on that narrow door, willing it to open, dreading it would. Minutes lengthened. The bedroom clock ticked so loud it felt accusatory. At last the EMT emerged, face drained of color. She motioned me toward the kitchen, away from the crowd. Her voice was barely more than breath. She confirmed, "There's been touching." Repeatedly. She glanced over her shoulder. "Your daughter named someone." My knees threatened to fold, but I braced against the counter. "Who?" A pause. "Your brother-in-law." The world tilted, then righted itself into a colder version. Rage flashed so hot my vision pinpricked. I inhaled until my ribs hurt, forced myself to stay upright. "Thank you so much," I managed. "Please, stay with her." When the officers turned toward Travis, chaos bloomed. Claudine stepped between them. "This is ridiculous. Travis would never." Rowena clawed at my sleeve. "You're tearing this entire family apart." Travis put on his best wounded expression. "I swear I did not do anything. The kid's confused." The tallest officer remained calm, reading rights over the commotion. Cuffs clicked, metal against bone, an unforgiving sound. Grandma Agnes covered her mouth, eyes wide. Cousin Phoebe started crying. Through it all, Elara peeked from the bedroom door, cheeks blotched pink. I hurried to her, kneeling so we were level. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," I murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Mommy believes you completely. You're safe now." Her fingers curled into my palm. I was scared to tell. "I know, darling," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But you're not alone anymore." Travis was guided down the hallway, wrists bound. As the door opened, cold air whooshed in, scattering the smell of Thanksgiving. He shot me a final glare, part threat, part plea, before the officers led him into the flashing night. Claudine followed to the jam, hand gripping the frame. She did not look at her son-in-law. She stared at me, her voice low, each word chipped from ice. "I'll never forgive you for this." Claudine's promise of everlasting resentment was still echoing behind the storm door when the patrol car rolled away. I did not answer her glare. I focused on buckling Alara into the back seat of the ambulance for the short ride to the children's hospital. An EMT handed me a pamphlet on traumatic response, but the paper trembled so badly in my grasp the words blurred by the time I gave a statement at the precinct and returned to our duplex. Dawn had salted the sky. 7 long days have limped past since that night. No one from the family has called, texted, or even clicked a single sad emoji on my social media post explaining Alara's absence from school. Claudine's number shows up as blocked when I dial. Rowena's voicemail is still full. Reverend Amos Fletcher left a single syrupy message about letting grace do its healing work, then suggested I stop attending women's group until the dust settled. Dust. As though my daughter's pain were just a film to wipe from a shelf. Inside our little rental, the silence is not peaceful. It paces. The refrigerator hum buzzes louder. The floors creak more often. Some mornings I find myself checking the locks twice. Then again, before waking Alara for school. She still crawls into my bed at night, fingers hooking my sleeve tightly as though I might slip away. When I ask whether she dreams, she only shrugs. On Tuesday, she sat cross-legged at the kitchen table, eyeing the wooden chair like a dog eyes a trap. "Is it okay to sit now, Mommy?" she whispered softly. I forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Here. I'll put a pillow right here for you." She perched like a sparrow, shoulders stiff, and devoured her cereal without once looking up. Wednesday, halfway through paperwork at my office, the phone rang. Caller ID read Harmony Elementary. My pulse hiccuped. "Miss Duncan, this is Mrs. Lenora Price, Alara's teacher. Nothing urgent, she is fine, but I'd truly appreciate if you could come in this afternoon." Her voice carried an undercurrent, the tone professionals use when they are afraid of scaring you. "It is about a drawing Alara made during center time. I believe it relates directly to what happened." The rest of the workday dragged like wet denim. At 3:30 I parked outside the school, lungs too tight for October air. Walking the corridor, I passed tack boards covered in stick turkeys and "I'm thankful for" lists. Normal childhood. For a sliver of a second I envied those parents whose biggest fear was gluten in the cafeteria. Mrs. Lenora Price greeted me at her desk, lips pressed thin. Beside her lay a sheet of red construction paper. She slid it forward. "Alara told me I could show you." Crayon strokes carved a chair. My mother's antique dining chair. But Alara had drawn spikes jutting from the seat, crimson lines dripping down. Above it, a stick girl sobbed enormous blue tears. Off to the side loomed a dark scribble with teeth. My throat shrank. She said very clearly, "This is Grandma's chair, Mommy." Exact words, Mrs. Lenora Price murmured. And that it hurt terribly. She folded her hands. "I'm mandated to report. The counselor has already phoned Child Protective Services." Guilt slammed me so hard I gripped the edge of the desk. How many Thanksgiving dinners had I praised Alara for sitting nicely? While that cursed chair branded itself into her memory, I forced steady breathing, thanked the teacher, and promised full cooperation. CPS rang that evening, polite but practiced. The caseworker requested copies of medical notes and the existing police file. I complied, emailing scans between bites of reheated mac and cheese. While the files uploaded, Alara colored silently beside me. I noticed a photo album open on the coffee table. Claudine's Christmas party last year. Alara had stuck a neon sticker over Gideon's face, the bachelor brother who always brought magic tricks and extra candy. Something in my stomach folded. Bedtime arrived. I read Goodnight Moon, added an extra verse from her favorite hymn, and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. Candlelight from the nightlight painted soft ovals on the wall. I stroked her hair until her eyelids drooped. "Mommy," she spoke so faintly I almost missed it. "Yes, baby?" "You promised I never have to go back there." "I meant it. Never again." She nodded, lashes trembling. Then, just before sleep carried her off, she murmured, "There's something I did not tell you yet, about the special game he played with me." My heart lurched so hard it stung. "We can talk in the morning, okay, sweetheart?" She managed a tiny yes, already drifting. I kissed her forehead, tasting salt that might have been hers, or mine. As I closed the door, the furnace kicked on, rattling the vents like distant footsteps. I stood in the hallway hugging myself, ears ringing with that single word. Game. And I knew, deep down, the fight was nowhere near over. Alara's confession lingered in the room like smoke long after she slipped into dreams. I sat on the edge of the mattress, counting the rise and fall of her chest until the rhythm steadied. Only then did I gather her drawings, shut off the lamp, and retreat to the living room, where the night felt unbearably too big. She woke again near midnight, padding down the hall in sock feet. "I cannot sleep unless you hold me tight," she whispered. I carried her back, settled into the rocking chair, and wrapped a quilt around us both. That was when the words came, soft as moth wings. "Uncle Travis liked the quiet game," she began. "If I sat very still and did not make a sound, he said I was a real winner." I kept my voice level. "What happened if you moved, sweetheart?" He would press my legs down. Sometimes he pinched me, and if I cried, then I had to start over again. Her small fingers twisted the edge of the quilt. He said good girls never fidget or make noise. My stomach flipped. Horizontal stripes of moonlight crawled across the floorboards. Did anyone else know about this terrible game? She hesitated, then nodded. "Grandma saw once. She said I was just being difficult." When Alara finally drifted off, the adrenaline I had banked in my muscles had nowhere to go. I stole to the bathroom, closed the door, and let the sobs break free into a hand towel. Scenes replayed. Me in the kitchen refilling tea. Travis in the dining room entertaining the kids. How many times had I laughed from the stove, while my child counted silent seconds to survive? Guilt tasted like copper. Dawn found me at the table, drafting notes for the caseworker. At 8 sharp, I called her direct line. My voice shook only once. Alara disclosed additional abuse last night. Details and frequency. On the other end, Kendra's tone sharpened. "We will schedule a forensic interview this afternoon. Can you have her at Riverstone Advocacy by 2 o'clock? She paused. "Given the escalation, we may arrange emergency protective measures for both of you immediately." I thanked her, hung up, and exhaled through clenched teeth. The battle line had moved closer. Riverstone was a renovated ranch house painted calming teal. Toys lined the waiting room, but Alara ignored them, choosing instead to braid and unbraid her raccoon's tail. Through a one-way mirror, I watched the interview begin. The therapist introduced herself, offered a juice box, then asked gently about games Alara played with family. My daughter's voice floated through speakers. Clear, matter of fact, heartbreakingly polite. She described the red chair, the spikes she imagined after it hurt her. The rule of silence. Travis said, "If I told, Mommy would get taken away." She explained as though reciting spelling words. Each careful sentence drove a nail. At one point, she lifted her dress hem to show faint bruises the ER had missed. The therapist's eyes shone, yet she maintained a steady murmur of reassurance. 40 minutes later, the session finally ended. Kendra met me in a side office, documents in hand. "We are opening a formal investigation into Travis. A temporary restraining order will be filed today." She tapped the papers firmly. "And Alara qualifies for trauma-focused counseling. You will receive a schedule immediately." Gratitude and dread tangled inside me. I signed where she indicated, printing my name with deliberate strokes. so no one could ever claim I hesitated. Leaving the center, the autumn sun felt too bright, cars too loud. I buckled Alara in, then slid behind the wheel, fingers tight around the leather. In the rearview mirror, my face looked older than a week ago. Paler, but carved from something harder than fear. I whispered to that reflection. They counted on my silence. They completely forgot who taught me to survive. Back home, I opened my contacts, scrolling until I found Camille O'Hara, an attorney I had met volunteering at the shelter. My thumb hovered over the message icon. Before I could type, a new text lit the screen. It was from Rowena. "Stop this now, or we will take her from you." The text sat on my screen like a stone in my stomach. "Stop this, or we will take her from you." My own sister. The same woman who once cried in my arms and said softly, "If anything ever happens to me, you'll be like Alara's second mom forever." Now she was threatening me, using lawyers and custody like sharpened weapons. My fingers clenched around the phone. Not because I was afraid, but because I was furious. Furious at the cowardice, the silence, the way family turns on truth when it becomes inconvenient. I did not respond. I could not. Not yet. I just sat there in my kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Alara still curled up in the guest room, sleeping like the child she deserved to be. I glanced at the photo taped to my fridge. Alara at age 2, frosting all over her cheeks. My arm wrapped around her like a shield. I remembered that day. I remembered everything. And I remembered the beginning. The day Alara was born. I was there. I had rushed to the hospital straight from work, still in scrubs and sneakers. My sister was exhausted, drugged, pale, barely able to keep her eyes open. I had held Alara first, tiny, pink. A soft wail escaping those brand new lungs. My sister had reached out and touched my arm. "She is yours too," she murmured. "Promise me, if I ever lose myself, you will be her anchor." I promised. God help me, I meant it. That promise echoed in my head as I sat in the car outside Camille O'Hara's law office the next morning. Camille and I had not spoken in years, but she had been my college roommate, and she had a reputation for fighting like hell when it truly mattered. I had texted her the night before. By morning, she had cleared a slot for me. Inside, Camille did not waste time on small talk. She offered coffee, which I politely declined, then sat across from me in a quiet, clean office lined with case books and framed degrees. "Tell me absolutely everything," she said, and I did. Every whisper, every drawing, every red flag I had ignored, and every time I had let my sister's words override my instincts. When I showed her the message, the threat, Camille's face went still. "They are testing you," she said quietly. "That is what people like this always do. Push to see if you will break." I looked her in the eye. "I am not breaking." Camille nodded once. "Good, because this next part gets messy and difficult." She explained the legal landscape, how I was not Alara's legal guardian, how technically my sister still had full parental rights. If she filed for custody, if she painted this as a family misunderstanding, she might sway the court. But Camille's voice grew sharper as she added, "If Alara's in danger, and you have documented every step, we can push for emergency guardianship. It is not easy, but it is possible." I swallowed the knot rising in my throat. "What about the rest of the family? If they side with her—" "They will," Camille said bluntly. "At first, until the truth gets louder." Just then my phone buzzed again. Another message from my sister. "Lunch tomorrow. Just us. Let us talk like grown women." Camille narrowed her eyes. "That is not a peace offering. That is a dangerous trap." "I know," I said, "but I am going." The next afternoon, I parked outside a neutral cafe halfway between our houses. Bright, cheerful place. Booths lined the walls. Easy to hear, impossible to yell. My sister was already inside, sipping tea like we were just two old friends catching up. "Meredith," she smiled, rising to hug me. I did not move. She sat back down, pretending not to notice the cold air between us. "I just want to clear the air," she began. "Ilara's confused. You know how kids are, imagination and all that. She has always been sensitive." I did not speak. She sighed, soft and motherly. "I do not want to ruin our family over this. We have always had each other, have we not?" Then she reached into her purse and slid a thin manila envelope across the table. "What is this?" I asked, though I already had a sick feeling in my gut. "Just something to consider," she said lightly. "A compromise." I opened it. Inside was a draft custody filing, her intent to regain Ilara. Alongside it, a mutual silence agreement. If I dropped the claims and backed off, they would not pursue legal action. I stared at the papers, every word a slap. "You are trying to trade her trauma for your reputation," I said flatly. She blinked. "Meredith, do not be so dramatic. This is about keeping the peace." I looked her straight in the eye. Is that what he called it too? Keeping the peace? While she played that sick game? Her lips tightened. "You are making this worse. If you keep going, we will fight back, and we will win." I placed the envelope gently on the table. "No," I said softly, "you have already lost her. The question is, what else are you willing to lose?" I did not wait for a reaction. I left that envelope sitting on the table between us like a bomb with the pin pulled, and walked out of the cafe without another word. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at my coat. I welcomed the chill. It helped me stay upright, helped me fight back the nausea curling in my stomach. If you were in my place, facing a sister who tried to silence your child's pain with threats and paperwork, would you protect the truth at any cost? Share your feelings. Comment number 1 if you would never stay silent. The next morning, Ilara barely spoke. She sat at the kitchen table, her cereal soggy, untouched. I tried asking about math class, about the art club she used to love, but all I got was a faint nod or a tight little shrug. Her eyes did not meet mine. Something was slipping again. I could feel it. In the way she clutched her backpack with both hands like a shield. The spark that had begun to flicker back after the CPS visit. It was dimming. After she left for school, I tidied up the kitchen, then moved on to the living room. Her bag had been left by the door, unzipped. I reached down to close it and noticed something wedged between 2 worn spiral notebooks. A thick, crumpled paper, balled up like it had been hidden in a hurry. I sat down, flattening it across the table. It was a drawing, crude but deliberate. A little girl sat alone on a bench, her knees apart. Red crayon lines drawn in jagged streaks across the area between her waist and her legs. Behind her loomed a taller figure, stick-like, with broad shoulders, and a face labeled in uneven handwriting, Uncle T. Off to the side were 2 more stick people, both facing away, Mom, Claudine. They were watching and doing nothing. My breath caught. The paper trembled in my hands. For a long moment I just sat there, unable to move, unable to think. Then I heard footsteps. Ilara was back. She had forgotten her lunchbox. She froze in the doorway. Her eyes flicked to the paper in front of me, then to my face. And then she crumpled. "I am sorry, Mommy," she sobbed, voice high and shaking. "I did not mean to draw it. I did not know how else to say it out loud." I went to her without a word, wrapping my arms tightly around her small frame. Her tears soaked into my shirt. "You never, ever have to be sorry," I whispered into her hair. "You are brave, and you are not alone. I promise you, I believe you completely. I am not going anywhere." That afternoon, I picked her up from school early. I walked into the front office and asked to see the counselor, Darlene Whitford, a calm woman in her early 50s, with a deep crease between her brows that only got deeper as I handed her the drawing. Alara sat next to me, quiet but alert. Darlene adjusted her glasses and studied the paper. Her mouth parted slightly, then closed again. She looked at Alara. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "did you draw this picture?" Alara nodded. Darlene did not say anything else. She simply got up, locked the office door, and returned to her seat. "This is going up the chain right now." Within the hour, the school filed an additional report with CPS. I sat in the hallway outside the counselor's office while the school principal, Thaddeus Grant, a soft-spoken man I had barely met, came down and shook my hand. "Miss Duncan," he said firmly, "whatever you need from us, we will stand with Alara. Just tell us how we can help you." It was the very first time since this all began that someone outside my walls had said those words. We drove home in near silence. Alara stared out the window, her thumb pressed to her lips like a reflex from a younger time. I did not push her. I just kept one hand steady on the wheel and the other lightly resting on her knee. Dinner was quiet, just soup and crackers. She did not say much, but she ate. That alone felt like a small victory. I was rinsing dishes when I heard her footsteps again. Soft, unsure. She stood in the doorway to my bedroom. Her voice was barely louder than a breath. "Can I please sleep with you tonight, Mommy?" I nodded, pulled back the covers, and let her curl beside me. Her small hands gripped the fabric near my shoulder. The room was dark. Just the faint hum of the heater and the rhythm of our breathing. Then, in a voice so faint I almost missed it, she asked, "Do you really think they will believe me this time?" I turned toward her, smoothing her hair, but I did not answer right away, because in that moment I finally understood. Alara was not just scared, she was tired, exhausted to the bone. I did not sleep much that night. Alara curled up next to me, her little hand wrapped around my wrist, like I might disappear if she let go. Her whisper still ringing in my head, "Do you think they will believe me this time?" Cut deeper than anything I had ever heard in a courtroom. I lay awake long after her breathing slowed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many nights she had spent like this before she finally spoke. The next morning I was in the kitchen making eggs when my phone vibrated on the counter. Ms. Corinne Abbott. It was the school counselor's voice, low, careful. "I think you need to come in. Alara left her school tablet in the reading nook yesterday, and when I opened it to charge it, there was a recording. It sounds like it started by accident, or maybe not. Either way, I think you will want to hear it." She did not elaborate. She did not have to. My chest clenched. I told her firmly I would be there in 20 minutes. I dropped Alara off at school myself, kissed her forehead softly, and promised her again I would see her later. She did not smile, but her eyes held something different this morning. Not relief exactly, just a quiet kind of watching, like she was measuring the world, one reaction at a time. As soon as I was alone in the car, I parked behind the school library, rolled up the windows, powered on the tablet the counselor had left for me. I opened the file. For the first few seconds, there was only faint static, the sound of sheets shifting, and distant footsteps. Then came the voices. "I told you," a woman said, sharp, tired. "Do not let her say too much at school." Another voice followed, older, clipped, colder. "She needs to learn. If she keeps flapping her mouth about that man, he will end up in jail. And then we all lose." I knew those voices. Rowena, her grandmother, Claudine. I did not even realize I had gripped the steering wheel until I felt the ache digging into my knuckles. Then softly, Alara's little voice broke through. "But it hurts." A pause. Then her mother snapped harshly. "Then maybe stop acting like a spoiled brat." The next sound was not words. It was the unmistakable crack of skin meeting skin. Then her voice, small and breaking. "Mommy, please. Do not let him." The rest was muffled crying. A rustle. Then nothing. Nothing but silence. I stared straight ahead, frozen in place. I could not feel my legs. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the tablet. I sat there for nearly 10 full minutes before I remembered to breathe. Then I did what any woman who had lived through a courtroom war zone would do. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app, and hit record. I let the tablet replay word for word into the speaker. No enhancements, no editing, just the raw truth. Then I called Isolde Kerrigan, a legal advocate I had worked with back when I volunteered on domestic violence cases. She answered on the third ring. "Meredith, it has been a minute. Everything okay?" "No," I said flat. "I have a minor under my care. I have a recording. It includes emotional abuse, physical harm, and evidence of coercion to protect a sexual abuser. I need to know exactly what is possible, right now." There was no hesitation in her voice. "Bring me the audio. We can file an emergency petition for protective custody." "That is enough for a judge to issue a restraining order." "I'm going to court," I told her, staring out through the windshield. "I am going to fight like hell." By the time I got home, Ilara was already there. School had let out early for a staff meeting. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her pencils scattered across the surface, working quietly. When she saw me walk in, she slid a piece of paper across the table and looked up, searching my face for something. Maybe permission, maybe safety. It was a drawing. Another one. This time it was not scary. It was her, standing tall in front of a shadowy figure with red eyes. In one hand she held a shield. On the shield, in blocky handwriting, she had written, "Aunt Meredith." I knelt beside her, rested my forehead against hers, and said quietly, "This time, absolutely no one is going to silence you." That night I stayed up, printing forms, sorting evidence, organizing notes. Ilara fell asleep on the couch, her drawing in her lap. I carried her to bed, tucked her in gently, and left the hallway light on. When morning came, we were out the door before the sun crested the trees. As I pulled onto the road toward the courthouse, Ilara reached across the console. Her fingers found my pinky. She wrapped hers around it and held on. Then, almost too softly to hear, she whispered, "Is this what bravery feels like?" I looked over at her, and for the very first time, I let the tears come. Ilara's question still clung to the windshield fog as we eased carefully into the courthouse lot. I squeezed her pinky back. "Bravery feels like breathing when the air is thin, but we will breathe together, no matter what." She managed a small nod. The blue cardigan I had laid out for her buttoned tightly all the way to the collar. Inside, the marble floors echoed every step. I could tell she heard it too. Every click another reminder of how large this building was, how tiny she must feel in comparison. I knelt, straightened her little hair clip. "Truth is never rude," I whispered. "It is just loud enough to be heard clearly." She pressed her lips together and followed me past the metal detector. Judge Franklin Morell's courtroom smelled of lemon polish and old paper. We took our place at the petitioner's table. Isolde slid a reassuring glance my way. Rowena swept in next, heels puncturing the hush. Beside her, Claudine in a charcoal suit, and trailing them, a man I had never seen. Grey blazer, stiff smile, leather briefcase. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Duncan, you are requesting emergency guardianship. Miss Rollins, you filed a counter-petition for a full custody evaluation and provided expert testimony." He looked at the stranger. Rowena rose. "Yes, Your Honor. We have brought Dr. Lowell Keaton, licensed therapist, to address concerns about Meredith's mental stability and the possibility she is influencing the child." My sister's lawyer slid a document forward. The words "obsessive savior complex" were bolded. I felt Isolde's elbow nudge mine. "Stay calm," she breathed. Dr. Keaton took the stand. His voice oozed certainty. "I have reviewed Miss Meredith Duncan's social media posts. volunteer history, and recent behavior patterns. They indicate a fixation on rescuing others, often projecting unresolved trauma. He shuffled papers theatrically. Children in her care may adopt these narratives. I kept my face neutral, but inside a fuse hissed. Isolde scribbled on a legal pad, "Not licensed in Kentucky," and slid it beneath my fingertips. When it was our turn, Isolde stood. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit A." She played the recording from Ilara's tablet. The room fell into a vacuum. Ilara's small voice trembled. "But it hurts." Then the cold reply from her mother. The slap. The whimper. Somewhere behind me, a chair creaked and stopped. Judge Franklin Morell's jaw set. Isolde continued. Exhibit B. Disciplinary documentation from the Nevada Board of Behavioral Health. Dr. Keaton was reprimanded, and his license suspended for unethical diagnosis. She turned, meeting his eyes. "Sir, are you currently licensed in this state?" Keaton's mouth opened, closed. My application is pending." "Thank you," Isolde said firmly. "No further questions." The judge tapped his gavel once. "I have heard enough. Temporary emergency custody is granted to Meredith Duncan effective immediately. A criminal investigation into Travis Rollins remains active. Furthermore, the court issues a strict no-contact order against Rowena and Claudine pending review." My sister's lips parted, stunned silence replacing her practiced calm. Claudine reached for her arm, but she pulled away, eyes burning with fury. Outside the courtroom, sunlight spilled through tall windows. Ilara climbed onto the bench beside me, leaning into my side. Reporters loitered at the security desk, but no one approached. For a rare moment, the hallway felt private. She tucked her head under my chin. "Can I please go home now, Mommy?" she asked. Voice small but steady. I kissed her hair. "We are building a brand new one. Just for you." Ilara's question lingered as we left the courthouse, her head resting on my shoulder, the afternoon sun warming the marble steps. 2 weeks later. That moment still glows in my memory, like a porch light guiding us home. The new rental is small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. But every wall has fresh paint, and every door swings open freely, without a key. Each morning I wake to the smell of maple syrup, and the slap of Ilara's bare feet on hardwood. She lines her sneakers by the welcome mat, lace bows neatly double-knotted. It is the first thing she does when she comes inside, proof she no longer expects to be whisked away without warning. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We drive to art therapy. On the off days she attends school half-time, easing back into spelling tests and jungle gym politics. Evenings we plant seeds in the backyard. Basil, marigolds, 3 tiny sunflower starts. She says with certainty, the flowers make the fence look happier. One quiet Thursday she emerges from her room, holding a sheet of thick paper, numbers scrawled across the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, like a list. Beside each number is a stick figure. The first is me, hair scribbled in brown loops. The second is her, smiling. The third is Grandpa, grey curls, guitar in hand. The fourth figure stands apart. A rectangle drawn around him, like a shadow box. Sharp eyebrows, an angry mouth, labelled Uncle Gideon. I freeze. Uncle Gideon, my sister's bachelor brother. He had not crossed my mind since last Christmas, when he performed magic tricks with coins behind Ilara's ear. He was never in the initial reports, never on the CPS radar. "Honey," I ask, keeping my voice steady, "why is Uncle Gideon in a box?" Her eyes drop. "That is my room at Grandma's. He used to come in after the game." She watches me carefully, measuring my reaction. I did not want to make trouble. A slow throb starts behind my temples. I snap a quick photo of the drawing and email it to Detective Abram Kessler. Before the tremor in my hands spreads, He calls within minutes. Voice clipped. We missed him. I am sending a team to interview other children who attended those family dinners. 5 days later, Kessler rings again. Uncle Gideon is in custody, charged after 2 other minors corroborate Alara's description. Your sister's statement? She knew something felt off, but did not press him, because family comes first. That night I find Alara on the patio. Watering the sunflower starts with a plastic jug. She hums under her breath, off-key, but fearless. I sit beside the planter box, watch the soil darken beneath the trickling water. They grow slow, she tells me, toes wiggling in the fresh dirt. But they are big and strong when they are ready. I tug the brim of her straw hat. Just like you, I say. The mailbox squeaks the very next day. Inside is a cream envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. My pulse flutters as I tear it open. Meredith, I was wrong. I wanted to believe the stories were lies. Because the truth hurt more, I will testify. I am sorry I let silence speak for me. Mom. I read it aloud at the kitchen table, while Alara colors a castle. When I finish, she sets down her crayon and says simply, I want to stay here. I smooth the letter flat and tell her, you will. Later, after dishes are stacked and the nightlight glows, Alara crawls onto the couch beside me. We share banana pancakes left over from breakfast, her idea of dessert. She leans her head on my arm and lets out a sigh, a sound so light it almost floats away. I think back to every siren, every slamming door, every sleepless night counting her breaths. I used to believe rescue was dramatic. Flashes, lawyers, a single decisive moment. But real rescue is quieter than that. It is a child finally sleeping through the night. A shoe rack by the door. Pancakes for dinner, because nobody is timing the meal. Alara yawns, pushing her plate aside. Does this mean I am safe now? She whispers. I pull the knitted blanket over us both and kiss the top of her head. No, baby, I say, heartbeat thrumming with something that finally feels like peace. It means you are home. And that is the truth I hold on to. Home is not built by blood or silence. It is built by choices, by love, by courage to speak when others would rather turn away. For years I thought survival meant being strong alone. But freedom came the moment I allowed myself to believe that love could be louder than fear. If you have ever carried a silence too heavy, or felt the weight of protecting someone you love, I invite you to share your story, your experience, or even just your feelings in the comments. You never know whose heart your words might reach. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss the next story. And before you leave, drop the words, "Choose freedom" in the comments. It is a declaration, a reminder that your voice matters, that healing is possible, and that no one can silence the truth forever. Thank you so much for listening, for standing with us in spirit, and for believing in stories that matter. I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself. And remember, freedom, love, and home can always be rebuilt.